Romance gets dismissed all the time. Easy to read, easy to write, easy to dismiss. But whenever I hear that, I know that the person saying that doesn't know what they're talking about. Because the thing is, romance isn't easy. It's just doing work that people don't know how to see. And if you disagree, I'm sorry, but we're gonna fight and I'm gonna win. Hi, I'm Jessica, and today I want to talk to you about why romance keeps being treated as a lesser genre and why that take is wrong. And I mean wrong not in the that opinion hurts my feelings, I don't want to hear it anymore. No, I mean structurally wrong in the sense that they don't know or they misunderstand what romance is doing as a genre. When people call romance easy, they are usually not talking about sentence level craft. They are talking about predictability. Like you have a couple, they meet, they feel attraction for each other, there's conflict, they end up together. But because you know where the story is going, you might think that getting there is simple, and it's not. Just because you know where a city is, you don't know exactly what road you need to take. That's like saying that beef Wellington is easy because you know it's going to be delicious. It's not. The outcome isn't the hard part. The hard part is the execution. Romance is one of the few genres where the ending is promised up front, which means that you can't hide the execution behind gimmicks or behind shock value or behind anything really. Everything depends on whether the emotional progression actually works, and that's not easy. And if you think that's easy, go make up beef Wellington. I don't want to talk to you. Romance doesn't rely on spectacle to prove its value. It doesn't get credit for elaborate world building or for shocking twists and turns or high concept premises. A good romance is successful because of something that is much quieter and much more difficult to measure, which is emotional logic. Romance asks a very specific question, which is, can these two people grow enough and mature enough to be capable of choosing each other? That's the question. That's what makes a good romance work. And when a romance answers this question well, the work disappears because the reader is not paying attention to the mechanics anymore. They are just happy because the ending works and they are satisfied. And make no mistake, it's invisible labor, but invisible doesn't mean simple. It means that the craft is doing its job. There's another layer to why romance gets treated as easy, and this one makes me angry, honestly. And romance isn't dismissed just because how it's structured, it's because what it treats as meaningful. Emotional interiority, vulnerability, desire, respect, care, private choices. These are things that are treated as high stakes in a romance novel, and it asks the reader to pay attention to what people feel, to how they connect, how they attach, how they protect themselves even, and what it costs them to let someone in. And those are things that our culture isn't particularly good at valuing, especially because they are associated with being a woman. We as a society tend to respect stories where the conflict is external and visible, like war, survival, solving a crime, beating someone at a sport, I don't know, winning something. The ending might be predictable because you know that the protagonist is going to win whatever sport they are competing, or the crime is going to be solved, or you know the allies are going to win the war. No one calls a war novel easy because the ending is predictable, and no one calls a mystery easy because we know that the mystery is going to get solved. But romance gets flattened to they fall in love, and as if the outcome flattens the whole experience and the whole work that the genre is doing. That reduction doesn't make sense, or it only makes sense if you think that emotional change is not as important, or it isn't even real change. And if you don't see choosing someone and making yourself vulnerable and committing and risking being hurt, restructuring your life around someone else, if you don't see those things as consequential, then of course romance looks small by comparison. Of course it looks obvious. Of course it looks easy. And this dismissal isn't neutral. It's built on a hierarchy of things or struggles that we consider legitimate. External danger counts, but internal struggles don't count as much. Like Romans insists that private emotional decisions matter. And historically, that insistence has been treated as a lesser or softer or unserious because it's coded feminine. And that's not a coincidence. I'm sorry, that's a value judgment. Romance doesn't allow the writer to hide behind the plot. You can't distract the reader with, I don't know, explosions or lore dumps or mechanics or the magical system that you build. If the characters don't change in a way that makes emotional sense, then the story fails spectacularly. Because romance requires coherent character arcs, emotional progression, causality, clear causality inside the relationship itself, or it's going to feel flat. There's another reason why romance gets dismissed as easy, and this actually makes me happy. And the reason is that it makes some people uncomfortable. By some people, I mean men. And the reason is that romance raises expectations. Romance teaches women that they can be emotionally seen and chosen and treated with respect and treated as a priority and not, as an option. And once you see that on the page, it becomes harder to accept it in real life. And this isn't romance teaching women to demand perfection or expect unrealistic devotion. No, it teaches them to understand and recognize reciprocity. Because if a character is willing to show up and fully and give time and give effort and care and emotional honesty, then the story treats that as reasonable and teaches you how to expect it in return. But unfortunately, this novel idea gets treated as unreasonable far more often than it should because, we live in the world, In essence, romance teaches women how to expect a whole meal and not just take the crumbs. And listen, we all know this. There are bad books in all genres. It's a reality of life. But romance is one of the few genres where people treat it like if there's one bad book, then all the genre is going to be bad, right? Obviously not. You don't read a bad thriller and think that all thrillers are pointless. Why do they even exist? No. But people read one bad romance and they say, see, it's all pointless. Why do they keep writing this? This is trash. And that's not critique. That's being very lazy. And it disproportionately affects a genre written for and by people whose emotional labor is already taken for granted. Romance doesn't need to become darker or grittier just to be taken seriously, and it definitely doesn't need to justify itself by borrowing aesthetics or priorities from other genres, because the problem was never that romance lacked complexity. The problem is that the complexity that romance highlights is not what people were trained to respect. Romance asks you to take emotional change seriously. It assumes that who you love and how you shape your life around that are decisions that are important. And if you don't see that as meaningful, then romance will always look small to you. But that's not a failure of the genre. That's a limitation of the lens that you're using to evaluate it. Readers and critics need to stop with the idea that only external conflict or the visible conflict is the only deep one or important one, because a story that can make emotional change feel inevitable, earned, irreversible isn't easy. It's a very well constructed story. It is intentional and it has depth and it has discipline and it should be appreciated. Romance gets dismissed as easy because we don't know how to see the work that it's doing. We don't know how to see the emotional depth. But that's not a genre issue, that's an us issue, and it's something that we should work on. If this resonated, tell me in the comments what's the laziest criticism of romance that you have ever heard. You're just reading porn. That comes up a lot. And if you want more romance craft and critiques from someone who takes the genre very seriously, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye!